Good morning, friends. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship at Stony Brook, located on the ancestral lands of the Settlecot Nation. Welcome to everybody on this chilly but lovely spring morning. My name is Carol Castillo, and I am co-leading worship this morning, along with fellow worship associate Elise Parisi. Reverend Dave's sermon will be shown on the screen. We like to call it the Davatron. If you have any questions pertaining to religious education for children and youth today, please look for Wendy Engelhart, who is today's Acting Director of Religious Education. There she is. She will be happy to help you. The rest of today's worship team is listed in your order of service, and we are so very thankful to all who help us worship together each week. Whether you are here in our sanctuary or attending online, we are one congregation. So we like to say hello and good morning and wave to those who are joining from home. The camera is up here on your left. Good morning. I want to offer a very special welcome this morning to those of you who might be here for the first time or just visiting. And if you feel comfortable doing so, please raise your hand now if you'd like, and that way we can find you later on and greet you. For those who are here in person, plan to join us after the service for coffee and conversation. And for those who are with us online, you can sign off when we finish, return to the website or the news feed, and you'll find a link for joining one of the small group chats. Whether you are here or online, either way, you're going to find friendly people who can answer any questions that you might have. At any time during the service, you're invited to place a pebble in the water on the side table, which symbolizes a joy, a concern, a promise, or a release, something that's in your heart or your mind. Doing so will send ripples of your intention out into the world and connect to the intentions and thoughts of others. One brief announcement. Today is the deadline for signing up for the annual Passover Seder. Please fill out the sign-up board, which will be in the foyer, or see Lou Yedwab or Wendy Engelhart. They can answer any questions, help you sign up. Thank you. They want you to know that there's a new addition to the Seder this year. They're going to offer a time for all ages for the young and young at heart right before it begins. So please come and join the Seder. Whether it is your first or your 31st time, Wendy and Lou look forward to sharing this special event with you. And now, please, if you haven't already done so, silence your cell phone. That way we can all be fully present in this time that we share together. Let us now enter into the sacred space of worship with the sounding of the morning bell. May its vibrations open our hearts, clear our minds, and bring us fully into this moment.
Just a couple of words about the first tune, which is called Begin Again, looking at the sermon topic, Failure in the Good Life, and reading a little more about it. I thought it would be fun to have a melody that has to keep starting over again. So that's what, and then you go down the rabbit hole and it gets really insane, as you'll see.
flaming chalice is the symbol of Unitarian Universalism. If you're worshiping from home today, you might wish to light a chalice or candle as we kindle our flame here in the sanctuary. Today, we've invited Katie and Helena Johnston to come and light our chalice. We light our chalice to mark our intention to be together here today. The flame provides the promise of light as we seek awareness and illumination, the promise of warmth as we seek comfort and acceptance. We kindle the flame in the chalice, the container representing the support we rely on to preserve the light and the warmth that we create together. And now, if you would, please rise in body or in spirit. Join in singing our first hymn, number 29, Joyful, Joyful, We Adore Thee.
Our time for all ages is entitled Tilda Tries Again, written and illustrated by Tom Percival. First, an excerpt from a note from the author. Dear reader, sometimes things feel hard, like nothing is working out. That's what happens to Tilda in this story. But while giving up might feel like the easiest option, it never really helps. Tilda's world was just as she liked it. She had her friends, her books, her toys. Everything was just right. Until one day, Tilda's world turned upside down. All of a sudden, everything was topsy-turvy and nothing felt right anymore. Things that had once seemed simple now felt incredibly difficult. Tilda didn't feel like seeing her friends. In fact, she didn't feel like doing anything. Everything just seemed too hard. Eventually, Tilda gave up, and decided to do nothing. Then one day, Tilda saw a ladybug stuck on its back. Its tiny legs waggled in the air. "Poor little thing," she said. "You're all topsy-turvy, just like me." As Tilda tried to work out how to help, the ladybug wiggled and struggled. It was no use. Tilda's heart sank. But then the ladybug tried again, and again, and again, until at last it flew free. Tilda thought about this. The ladybug hadn't given up, so neither would she. She found her toy blocks and tried building something. It worked. Tilda started to feel a little bit better. After that, she tried reading her favorite funny book and laughed until her tummy ached. Then she went out to play in the yard. Everything felt very strange, but Tilda tried her best. And the more Tilda tried, the more she found she could do. Although there was one thing she still felt very hard to do. Tilda paused at the edge of the park and watched her friends. She just watched. She almost left. But then Tilda remembered that ladybug. Could she be brave? Could she keep trying? Tilda decided that she could, and it was the very best decision she ever made. Even though her world was still a little topsy-turvy, Tilda felt she could cope. And because she thought she could cope, her world seemed less topsy-turvy. From that day on, whenever Tilda's world felt a bit wobbly, she tried her best. And if that didn't work, she tried again. Please join together to sing the children out to their classrooms with the re-benediction found on the inside back cover of your hymnal.
Let us enter into a time of meditation. We'll begin with spoken words this morning, which are by Jess Reynolds, called The Case for Drudgery. Then we'll have a moment of silent meditation, and Peter and Dee Dee will bring us out of the silence with hymn 123, The Spirit of Life. If you aren't familiar with it, you may wish to open it right now to that page. The case for drudgery. Peel 100 potatoes, chuck 50 ears of corn, sit in a folding chair on the cracked tile of the kitchen floor and fill the compost bin with green and brown. Tap your foot to the rhythm of an anvil and iron until you've forgotten everything but the cold metal peeler in your hands. Carry a mare's coat in tight circles from shoulder to tail, coating your face with brushed up dust. Breathe, cough, repeat. Lay stones in parallel, 4 rows of rectangles for the backyard walkway your husband dreams of. Wash dishes at a summer camp. Plate, fork, bowl, repeat. Learn a beat beyond the drums of your own heart and play it on the dinner table. Breathe, cough, repeat. In honor of Women's History Month and in recognition of the ongoing crisis being faced by immigrants here on Long Island and throughout our country, our Share the Plate partner for the month of March is the Learning Connection for Adult Education, a non-profit adult educational program sponsored by the Sisters of St. Joseph in Brentwood. For more than 30 years, the Learning Connection has created a welcoming learning community for women of all backgrounds, especially those who have had limited access to education and for whom English is a new language. In a multicultural, non-competitive setting, the program helps foster confidence, independence, and connection. Participants follow the course of study suited to their needs, abilities, and personal goals. One of our members and worship associates, Ellen Bartley, has been a volunteer for years with the learning program within the Brentwood School District and will be happy to give you more information. Actually, Ellen, can you raise your hand? Yeah, she's up the back. As they depend on volunteers and they depend on donations. So since this is the last day of March in terms of our giving, let's support them with enthusiasm and generosity.
This is another song that was written specifically for this service, although it applies to many aspects of our current life. It's called When It All Seems Too Much.
So our beautiful table over there with the purple tablecloth, we acknowledge these pebbles and their ripples which you see before us. May those ripples carry out shared joys and sorrows, reminding us that we are connected and we hold each other in compassion. And we also think about those who are at war right now and all that they're going through, and you could also include them in your thoughts as well.
The reading this morning is the poem Praying by Mary Oliver. It doesn't have to be the blue iris. It could be weeds in a vacant lot or a few small stones. Just pay attention, then patch a few words together, and don't try to make them elaborate. This isn't a contest, but the doorway into thanks and a silence in which another voice may speak. Today's message from Reverend Dave Messner, our consulting minister, is called Failure and the Good Life. It is about how there is more power to finding ourselves in the middle of a story of overcoming than a story of relentless winning.
There was a good stretch of time that my small-town local paper had a simple formula for populating its Facebook feed every week. First, on Monday, they'd give you the mugshots of the people who were arrested over the weekend. Second, Wednesdays, they gave you the health department cleanliness scores for everybody's favorite lunch places. And finally, on Friday, I suppose to get you ready for church on the weekend, they give you the obituaries for the week. I would religiously check out each of these Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. I wanted to know if there are people I cared about, people I was responsible for who had been incarcerated. I wanted to know if I was making dangerous decisions in the places I was going to eat. And I, most of all, want to know if I'd lost somebody that was important to me. It's all intriguing info, stuff we care about for good reasons. Most of all, in the sweep of that week, I would pay attention to obituaries. I read those now like I never did in my youth. Since coming into ministry, I've come to really appreciate the art of crafting the obituary and the art of delivering a fine eulogy. Often, at a really difficult time, one has to figure out what should be put in and what's supposed to be left out. In both the cases of the obituary and the eulogy, there is shockingly little telling of hardship and of failure, particularly failure. Almost none of it in eulogies as I sit through services, which are my favorite church services, to be honest. And it strikes me as a strange thing not to have failures to review and to recount if you've lived on this planet for, 100 years? Certainly. For a week? Definitely. If you have lived on this planet for a week, it's likely that you have a few failures, a few misfires, a few false starts that one could take inventory of. Maybe it's not the right place in a eulogy or an obituary, but it strikes me that we have a painfully small set of occasions to render our life narratives aloud, or in narrative form, whether it's aloud or whether it's written. Our opportunities to tell the story of our life, it's kind of limited. Job applications, right? We have the resume, we have the cover letter. Let me tell you everything you need to know so you can make a judgment about my future based on that glorious, glorious past. We have outings to the pub on Friday night after we close the newspaper on the obituaries, decide we're still alive. We say, let's go have a pint. And on the bar stool, we get to tell some stories of our life. Again, maybe heroic pursuits are what mostly come tumbling out in that room. And if you're really good, and if you get ahead of the game, and if you're like me, then you start working on your own obituary. You want to have a say in this matter. You want to have a say, and I think we go through life hungering for the chance to make meaning through telling stories, through writing narratives, through spinning tales of the self, tales of the heart, tales of the soul, tales of the people we love, right? We get to make meaning, or more precisely, we get to render the self of memory, the self of imagination, and we get to do that in a way that doesn't exist in reality, that is, coherently. We get to render a coherent self when we tell stories. And we need that because existence is fragmentary. Existence is kaleidoscopic. Existence, I hate to tell you on a Sunday morning, is nonsensical. But we've been given some gifts. I believe we've been given some gifts to render the nonsensical intelligible. And we do that through stringing a narrative, through taking fragments of glass, right, and pasting them in, creating a mosaic, a montage that gives us some sense of things, some idea of the whole that wouldn't otherwise exist. That's storytelling to me, whether that's a visual metaphor or more often it's linguistic, right? The logos, the gift of being human is the gift of the word and being able to render the word upon word, string upon string, that we might transmit these ideas down the line of the tribe. And as a tribe, we might be transformed and have an idea of our collective self that lifts us up and renders us whole when we otherwise would be dismembered, right? And so in this act of remembering and telling, we are creating something whole and something beautiful. These opportunities we have to tell our stories, to put the pieces together, to render word upon word, so often they implicitly discourage us from including failure within them, right? As if that's not part of this mosaic, as if that's not part of a whole life lived or part of the mixed bag that is the inheritance of being human. That is one of my great gospel truths. Have I said it in sermons here 5 times already? I don't know. Life is beautiful yet imperfect. Life is inescapably mixed in character. Beautiful and not beautiful, even ugly at times. Uplifting and soul-crushing. One and then the other in ways that don't exactly make sense and don't exactly seem logical. It's the nature of our life. And so we tell stories, and I think if we exclude the element of the not so beautiful, indeed the catastrophically failing from these stories, we do so at profound collective loss. We miss out on a big chunk of being human. And there's no such thing as being partly human, I don't think. I think that's not a state we can sustain for long. That we ought to endeavor for a kind of wholeness, which means a kind of mixedness of life. So, the decisions we make, for good and for ill, and the experiences we navigate, for joy and for despair, are not isolated occurrences, but they fit together in a stream in a way that tells a tale of a life with a moral valence. It tells that tale individually, and it tells a collective tale. One of my go-to philosopher heroes, Alistair MacIntyre, said it this way: the human is, in action and practice, essentially a storytelling animal. I can only answer the question, what am I to do, if I can answer the prior question of what stories do I find myself a part? What should I do? What should this character in the book do? I don't know. Let me read. Let me catch up to where we are in the story, and then I can make sense of the narrative arc and the right and the beautiful in my next action? What kind of story are we a part of together? What kind of book is this? Anyway, let's make sense of that together. And then we can figure out how we ought write the next chapter. That's the idea. Deeply ethical problem. What it is to flourish tomorrow has a lot to do with the choices we made yesterday. And that's what we have. The gift of the ability to navigate, a sense of memory, and a capacity to tell a good story. And a good story doesn't leave out the juicy parts. That's the learning I want to take away from Professor McIntyre and from my own experience in life. See, the truth is, on an average day, we meet more failure than success. But when we count, as some of us do, keep score on a board. Any of you have a chalkboard keeping score during your day? When we count or when we recount our day, more likely we come home and tell someone about how our day went. More often, what we recount is the sum of our successes. And in so doing, we omit, the majority and sometimes the most meaningful parts of our lives. Our instinctual aversion to failing and what we imagine it might say about us to others causes us to shrink away from getting the whole story, the whole beautiful story. It causes us to shrink away from wholeness and humanity about ourselves. How crazy is that? We shy away from telling ourselves the whole truth about ourselves, which would help us be more ourselves in the future. Such is the absurd condition that we find ourselves in, but we have the power to do something about it. For so many of us, a fear of failure holds us back, and letting our 1,000, 2,000, 10,000 persistent imperfections obscures the path to success and causes us to miss out on a lot of what will be grand adventure in our future. The aversion to seeing the imperfection of our past is foreclosing the possibilities of our future. So the gospel today, my charge to you, is simple. Tell the whole story. Tell it plain. At least to ourselves. At least when we're alone, right? When the lights are off, the curtains are drawn. Then, at least, once a year, tell the whole story and tell it plain, that you might be made better for it, made more whole by it. A healthy and enthusiastic, ethic of failure might come in handy for the ride in front of us, for all of us. It lets us make sense of our existence, not for some decorative purposes after our lives are over. Do not live for the obituary. Doesn't matter. Do not live for the resume. Doesn't matter. Do not even live for that bar stool if you're not going to make proper use of it. It doesn't matter. Make use of these gifts because we're still living and we have the chance to be radically shaped and guided by courageous experiences we are yet to have. And if we're to have those courageous experiences, we better be emboldened and not ashamed by the experiences of our past, as imperfect as I know they are. Now, I could easily tell you 100 stories of failure about my own life. First and foremost, I could tell you social failures. I could enumerate 50 cocktail parties, standing with a drink, and then getting back in the bar line so I wouldn't be seen stupidly standing alone with my drink. And you know a secret about bartenders like ministers? They have to chat with you, so go stand with them. That's my invitation to you at coffee hour. It's why I always hated coffee hour at every Unitarian fellowship I was ever in, because I hated stupidly standing alone and feeling like I had failed that simple test. So, 2 solutions to that: talk to the minister or become a minister, and then you don't have to stand alone at coffee hour. What are the other spheres of failure? Join me. You could raise your hand when you're ready to join me in any of these spheres of failure. I can't see you, but I'll be heartened by it at a distance. How about athletic failures, right? Can I tell you about wrestling camp? Why did I think I wanted to go to wrestling camp? I got pinned every time. Basketball camp. Why did I think I could jump 10 feet in the air doing some kind of layup, much less a slam dunk? Okay, let's move forward 30 years. Professional failures. Can I tell you a story about a $1 billion drug that we thought was worth 10 cents on the dollar, or that we could get it for 10 cents on the dollar? We didn't get it. We didn't make $1 billion. I cringe, I still think about that. Can I tell you about academic failures? Oh my gosh. My freshman year of college, I recall a particularly esoteric math midterm in which I did not understand like a single word of the 10 pages of narrative questioning. Narrative questioning. It was a math class, let me tell you. And so I just performed like a lot of calculus in the blank spaces on the page, hoping that I would get partial credit. I did not. I don't usually tell these stories, right? I don't really wish for them to appear in my obituary. And truthfully, I have other failure stories I may never tell aloud, right? They're not making it. Even those stories aren't making it on this tape in my home studio for you trusted people. I still cringe when I think about them. I still don't tell myself those stories. How crazy is that, right? Because I know that these insecure instincts, and all of these instincts are just insecurity of a different age lingering around too long. I know they are working against my real grown-up old man interests, which is to be whole and to be brave and to go into the next adventure with a sense of abandon and a hope for what can be that has never been before. That's a religious life, having a hope for what can be that has never been before. So today I ask you, have you ever really failed at anything? I hope so, or else the sermon is just missing the whole room. If no one has failed at anything, that would break my heart. Let me pull one more philosopher in here. This is Simone Weil. Instead of Alistair Scottish, Simone Weil was a French philosopher, genius. And she advised nervous students in this way. This is a little longer passage I want to share with you because she's outrageous. And this is outrageous advice. She tells this young student to look attentively and slowly at each task in which we have failed, seeing how unpleasing and second-rate it is, without seeking any excuse or overlooking any mistake, trying to get down to the origin of each fault in our work. There's a great temptation to do the opposite, she says. Most of us do this nearly always. We have to withstand the temptation. When we force ourselves to fix our gaze, not only of our eyes, but of our souls, she says, upon an exercise that we have failed, a sense of our mediocrity is borne in upon us with irresistible evidence. No knowledge, she says, is to be more desired. She's a tough teacher. But she was saying that we can get better at the subject, that we can develop humility, and the most of all, we can gain or regain some power over ourselves to direct our attention according to our highest aspirations and not according to our childish insecurities. It's that overcoming she's encouraging us to. The possibility that we can be not as children in that way, but feeling safe enough to see the world and ourselves as it really is, that we may occupy the true here and now as our true self, with other true selves imperfectly trying to make our way together. The ability to look clearly into failure, says Weil, or I take from Weil anyway, and then to own it is one of the most liberating superpowers of the soul. I can attest to that fact. One of you pointed out to me that I use the word magic a lot because I think the religious life is a lot about magic. I'll go a step farther. A devout religious life is about attaining superpowers. There we go. Marvel Universe. It's about attaining superpowers of the soul that transform human living into a more extraordinary and sublime endeavor. That's what we're doing here. And this work we do, this overcoming, is true not only for individual selves, but for collective selves that operate in organizations. It's possible for the organization, the body of which we are a constituent part, to leave behind childish ways and to grow larger, to become more resilient, more adaptive, to learn more readily, to laugh more easily, and to adventure more boldly. That's what we're doing here. This process of becoming and transforming is a road to adventuring more boldly together. More lightness, more joy, more beauty, more justice. That's the project I think we're in. And so I invoke today phrases from my business life, right? Fail fast, fail forward, fail to succeed. All true stuff. The practical merits of failure are many. You don't get up that experience curve without failures. You don't get Malcolm Gladwell's 10,000 hours without failing for 5,000 to 8,000 of those. I don't know if you read his book, but he talked about how the Beatles got good, was playing as a bar band 6 hours, 8 hours a night continuously, not that good there in Hamburg. And what came out was something exceedingly beautiful. But it took 10,000 hours of trying and failing to get there. Okay, let me talk. This is a hard week for the stock market. And so I want to say greater risk meaning volatility, meaning success and failure happening together, moving around the line. And in a week when we had more down than up, we can remind ourselves that that greater risk or volatility means greater return over the very long run. It's our hope to retire. And it's important because it tends to produce that outcome. So we learn from markets that failure is part of success. We learn from leading in organizations that failure is human, and humans are the absolute necessary ingredient of success. And so today I ask us to look with a loving parental eye on our whole selves, the successful parts, the not so successful parts, because they're held together in one bound reality. And so we celebrate the wholeness, not just the wins. I send you today with the question, what were the greatest failures of your life? The instructive kind, the redemptive kind, the shameful kind, the seemingly useless kind. Have you named and shared them? And what effect has that practice had? I don't know. Go do an experiment. Share one of those stories and see what comes from it. See who you help another 10 feet up the mountain. See what weight is lifted off of you. I guarantee you there is more power finding ourselves in the middle of a story of overcoming and learning than a story of relentless, mindless winning. So more important than the question of looking backwards is the question looking forwards. Where might we seek to fail now? We don't learn if we don't fail, and we don't redeem ourselves if we don't fail. If we are not constantly failing, then we are not living at the frontier of our souls. So, my friends, I wish you success beyond your expectations as part of an extraordinarily blessed life. I truly do. I also wish for you a fully human life with all that must entail. I pray that you come to know failure not as a hidden defect of such a life, but as the strong, fibrous material that lets you rise up straight and go forward to the next chapter and toward the font of a most generous spirit that touches and transforms the lives of others. May it be so, and amen.
Let's all sing together hymn number 128. As we depart, we offer you in the form of a blessing these resounding words from Laurelyn Bellamy. If here you have found freedom, take it with you into the world. If you've found comfort, go and share it with others. If you have dreamed dreams, help one another that may come true. If you have known love, give some back to a bruised and hurting world. Go in peace. And as our service concludes, let's wave and say goodbye to all those folks online.
If it ain't one thing, it's another.
Thank you so much. Just real quick, I wanted to make an announcement. I was hoping to have better news from the search committee today. The search committee had 3 excellent candidates, and the board met with these candidates over the past month. We submitted our ranking to the UUA this week, but we did not have a match. so sorry. Everyone was so happy. Right? It's me. It's me. Now, let me just say, though, moving forward, we will repost on April 1st. There are candidates that will be available. Just to remind everyone, we got Reverend Dave in May. So we have a couple of possibilities that we're looking into, and we will continue to pursue available candidates. It is still the goal of the search committee to find us a minister by August 1st. I want to thank my search committee team, Rich Hall, Maria Cotta, and Mike Hoffman. It's been a little bit of work. We've spent a little bit of time together, and we learned a lot. Mike is not here today, but when you see him, please give that man a hug. He has been on the search committee for 3 years now, and has been our guiding light and a source of tremendous information. Has just been fantastic, has put in more hours than I think any of us combined. Yeah. So, now have coffee. Thanks, guys.